Let me formally introduce myself. I am Jessica. I am the Miami regional organizer for Planned Parenthood. Organizing, basically, you all pretty much know, but organizing in like the activist and nonprofit realm is basically, it's my job to meet people where they're at and bring Planned Parenthood values and information to different groups of people, and to try to get them to support us and align behind us to help us promote our cause, right? Especially in Florida, as we all know, things are very scary here lately. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, a little bit about me. I don't know. I can share like religious background. I don't know. Oddly enough, I was raised Catholic, actually. I'm of Cuban descent. I was raised here in Miami. And I feel like, I don't know, a lot of my faith going forward, I've kind of moved away. I think I'm a little bit more agnostic now. I think, but I think the base that was given to me by my family and why I think I do the work that I do is, I feel like it's my part of a mission in my life to just help others. And this is a cause I really care about. So I've been into activism for a while, but I don't know, I think this has been the most exciting opportunity that I've had. So I've had a background in organizing before, once in a campaign, now for a nonprofit, now for Planned Parenthood. So I'm going to present a little slide deck for y'all. So as you can see by the title, today we are going to talk about the state of reproductive rights in Florida. We're going to go over everything that's happened in the last 5 months, which has been a lot. I'm just under a year here at Planned Parenthood, but it feels like I've been here for like 5 because of all the different occurrences and things that have come up in the last 6 months. So we're just going to go over what the lay of the land is now in our state. And then we're going to talk a little bit about things you can do to help, because I find that it's important to talk about the issue, but it's equally as important to let people know ways that they can help remedy the issue, because you have power. You're at this event and you're listening to somebody who's not in your normal circle talk, so you're already doing something great, and it's helping you share these values and this information more. So yeah. So I wanted to give, and I like to give everybody the space to talk about how they are feeling when it comes to this issue. And this was specific to the abortion ban in this presentation, but I don't know, how do you feel about this issue? How do you feel in light of the different policies that have been passed in Florida lately? If you don't know about them, you'll hear about them. But like, why does reproductive health and justice, concern you? And like, how do you feel about it? Do you have any thoughts that you want to share in the chat? I'll say like I'm very passionate about this issue because I come from a Hispanic background. Okay, Duncan says fundamental right. Thanks, Duncan. And it can be even just like a key word like Duncan did, but I come from a Hispanic background, and I feel sometimes like I didn't have a lot of information in my hands, you know what I mean? And I think I went into things a little bit blind, and I wish I didn't. So I want to be able to promote those things to people in the community. Elena says, I'm terrified. I am too, Elena. It feels like The Handmaid's Tale. Marie says it's all about choice, a woman's right. Yeah. And those are all valid. And thank you for sharing, by the way. So yeah, that's a little bit about the group. Frustrating, I was a teen when Morgan Taylor was helping women get abortions. Yeah. Abolition. I feel violated and that women are being treated like animals. I know what it was like before Roe. Yeah, betrayed, Kristen. Yeah. No, and that there's something about my age group that like we've never lived in a world where this hasn't been possible. So I feel like a lot of the conversations I'm having with like younger folks, I'm like, hey, this is gonna be gone. And they're like, no, what? No, like that's not a, and I'm like, no, it's hello, like no, like this is emergency time, sound the alarm, everybody gets scared. Part of the patriarchal scheme where women are property. Yeah, I hear you, Marie. And yeah, thank you for sharing, and let's take this sentiment and continue. But this is just a little reminder, like you're not alone. Um, so this is what we're going to be talking about today. So the impacts of HB5, which was an abortion ban passed in Florida very recently, the first and most strict of its kind passed here in the state since abortion was made legal, and was upheld in our state constitution. The 24-hour delay that was recently put into place in the courts, which we'll talk about later, and then the Supreme Court decision happening in July. And then we're going to talk about organizing and why the work matters. So we're going to get into a little bit about like the culture shift that needs to change, and what we need to do going forward to help this cause. And then we're going to talk a little bit about abortion funds and why they need our help. So yeah, let's go from there. So HB5 and what it means, right? So basically, HB5 is a 15-week abortion ban. And what it did was it made it illegal for people to obtain abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. There is no exception for rape, incest, trafficking, even for minors. And he did just sign it into law. He gave it sort of a minute after it was passed. It was passed early March in both the Florida House and the Senate, and he just signed it into law. It'll go into effect on July 1st. So as of now, the closest state in the Southeast United States that will have access to abortion up to the Roe versus Wade stipulated 23 weeks will be North Carolina. And even then, they have in not so subtle terms put out that they might be interested in putting an abortion ban. So it would become Virginia, even farther up. So who does this affect? A lot of the language about this bill was 15 weeks is enough, and 15 weeks is fine, and 15 weeks is acceptable. And this plays into this stigma that people have about abortion and have about reproductive health care, which is that there needs to be an acceptable abortion. There needs to be an acceptable reason why somebody's deciding to have a perfectly safe and normal medical procedure. And this was a lot of the rhetoric that legislators used. Who does this affect? This affects, I don't want to say the very worst, but some of our most disenfranchised, parts of our community, people in our community, because what they've done is they've basically made the waiting, the period, the length of time that somebody has to recognize when they are pregnant shorter. What does that mean, right? People who don't have access to healthcare, people who don't have access to pregnancy tests, people who don't have access to contraception, are more at risk, right? People who don't have access to healthcare and have to struggle to be able to find out if they're pregnant in the first place have a shorter time to act on a decision whether or not they want to continue the pregnancy. What is that? So basically what this bill has done is it's condemned people of lower socioeconomic status, people of color who, are already trying to make their way in the United States, in Florida, especially now since living costs have gone up. It makes it even harder for them to be able to make the choice. And it makes it more expensive if they want to, because now, right, instead of just being able up to 23 weeks, go to an abortion clinic and have an abortion at your own free will, you have to coordinate for funds to travel to North Carolina to take time off work. If you have children, which a lot of people who obtain abortions are people who are already parents and cannot support another child. You need childcare, and you need travel, transportation, hotel stay, food for wherever you're going. So what this has done is it's basically condemned those who could not afford it before, and it was already hard to access, even harder. And it's made it actually impossible in the state for people past 15 weeks to be able to make that decision. And like I said, this goes into effect July 1st of this year. And now we're going to get into the 24-hour delay in Florida, right? So on April 8th, of 2 Fridays ago, whatever, I can't count. After a 7-year-long court battle, a 2015 mandatory delay law went into effect in Florida. And what this means is that before a patient can get an abortion, right? Before this, a patient could walk into an office having already planned taking off the day for work, prepared everything that one day, go into a clinic, get an abortion, have their medical needs taken care of and leave, right? Now, what the state of Florida has done in a long court battle is it has allowed for the delay to take place, which basically means you are mandated, you must make 2 trips to the doctor's office. So instead of just going to the clinic and getting an abortion, you have to go to the clinic, go through the mandatory ultrasound screening, get the mandatory, counseling from whoever's there about your decision. Then you are forced by the state of Florida to wait a day. But what people don't realize is that most abortion clinics don't do abortions every day. What you do is you space them out on certain days of the week, because it's a long process depending on the type, whether it's medication or surgical. And they want to be able to give patients the most attention possible. And we're not, at least as it comes to Planned Parenthood, like our staff needs to alternate designated on what services we're going to offer, right? So this is not 24 hours. It's a week-long waiting period, basically. Again, what has that done? It's made it more expensive, and it's made it harder to obtain an abortion. So somebody who does not have a car and works an hourly job without paid time off needs to reschedule shifts twice, needs to take an hour-and-a-half long bus ride twice, needs to coordinate childcare twice. Again, another barrier. And something to note is that this is not grounded in any basis in other medical practices. There is no other medical procedure where they mandate you to wait 24 hours, except for abortion, which also furthers the stigma in society, because what they're doing is placing this hurdle to add shame. So yeah, this is another mandatory law put into place. So what does this mean for somebody seeking an abortion now in Florida, right? You must be before 15 weeks starting on July 1st. And if the only exception for people to have an abortion in the state is whether or not it is a fatal fetal abnormality, but it has to be approved by 2 separate doctors after 15 weeks. So again, you have to be able to afford visits to 2 different doctors on 2 different days and hope that you get them both to sign off. Because if one doesn't, you can't. That's the only exception for the 15-week abortion ban in Florida, which is another hurdle, right? So now with the 24-hour waiting period, you have to make 2 trips to the doctor. You have to notify a parent if they're under 18. You must have a parent's consent if they're under 18. You must go to court if your parent won't consent. So let's say like a minor is in an abusive situation and was assaulted by somebody in their household. In Florida, there's no way for them to be able to obtain it on their own. And you must receive state mandated counseling, which is basically like it is mandated that patients go in, receive an ultrasound, have to look at the ultrasound and decide, right? In the state of Florida. So you have to go through that. And you might be tricked and or shamed by a state-funded anti-abortion fake clinic on your way into the appointment. Because there's a lot of fake clinics, especially in Miami. They're called, there's some called, I'm just finding this out because they organized to stand in front of the health center on Coral Way. They do this every Saturday, by the way. So I have people that go out there and they help patients walk in and out of the center. I think they're called like For Life Reproductive Health Centers or Pro-Life Reproductive Health Centers or something like that. I can put this in an email afterwards for you all to look out for it and to like not recommend it, or maybe leave a Google review. But there's a group of them here in South Florida, actually. So yeah, this is what it looks like now in Florida. So here is an upcoming update. Here's the upcoming Supreme Court of the United States decision. Something to keep in mind is that this is going to be the biggest decision in terms of reproductive rights coming up. This is national. So now we're moving away from Florida to like the national landscape, right? The case is Dobbs v. Jackson's Women's Health Organization. And it began with a case in 2018. Mississippi passed a 15-week abortion ban. And, you know, this other organization challenged it in federal court. Yeah, sorry, typo, Ray, thank you. But Ray let us know that it says SCOTUS, but I forgot the U at the end. But yeah, so in 2018, the Mississippi 15-week abortion ban was signed into law. It was challenged in federal district court. The district court issued a temporary restraining order, followed by a preliminary and permanent injunction striking it down. In 2019-2020, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals agrees the ban is unconstitutional. And then in 2021, the Supreme Court agreed to hear the case and is going to decide whether all pre-viability prohibitions on elective abortions are unconstitutional. And the oral arguments were on December 1st of last year, and we should have a decision in June. So the next big push around all of this is going to be in June. I will say a couple of things, right? The fact that they picked up the case from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is not optimistic. When oral arguments took place, most of the judges were already insinuating or coming up with scenarios about what a world without Roe v. Wade would look like, right? So we're not expecting a good decision. Most of the reproductive justice community is expecting for them to get rid of Roe versus Wade because they would ultimately decide that pre-viability, the standard that Roe versus Wade sets is that you are able to have an abortion up to 23 weeks at viability, fetal viability, as stipulated by Roe versus Wade, right? What the Supreme Court is going to decide is whether or not bans that are before 23 weeks are unconstitutional, which basically means Roe versus Wade won't be the law of the land anymore. It'll just be up to whatever the state wants. And that's kind of the future that we're looking at. I recommended, as part of this lecture, the book, a handbook, Post-Roe versus Wade. And we're looking at a future where the country is going to be a patchwork of different laws based on where you are on abortion. So the Southeast, there's a lot of trigger laws that are going to go into effect because so many states have put in place unconstitutional bans, like Oklahoma. I've got a list actually going forward in the next slide, but a lot of these trigger laws and preset laws will go into place. So there will not be a standard upheld anymore. after this decision. Something to think about. And like I said, this is a national trend, right? So just an update for you about what's not happening just in Florida, but in general. In Kentucky, the legislature overturned Governor Beshear's veto of an anti-abortion law that would effectively ban abortion in the state. They overturned it. So he vetoed the anti-abortion law, and he vetoed the law, and then they overturned the veto. It basically, what it's done is it's put a list of restrictions that have made it virtually impossible to have an abortion in in Kentucky. I'm so sorry. Oklahoma's another one. But in Kentucky, it's basically impossible to obtain an abortion now.
I was just going to say, we're pretty much done in Kentucky, right?
Yeah,
it's the first state to just be done.
Yeah, it's done. Planned Parenthood and the ACLU filed a suit to challenge the law, which took effect, a few days ago. And without immediate judicial relief, abortion will be effectively banned in the state. So what they do is they take the caveats that Roe versus Wade put, which Roe versus Wade does not guarantee access, it guarantees legality up to a certain amount of time, right? So what they do is they put all these different bans to get rid of abortion access so that it becomes impossible. So Kentucky, it's pretty much gone. Oklahoma, Governor Kevin Stitt signed a total abortion ban into law, and it will be a felony to perform an abortion, punishable up to 10 years in prison and a $100,000 fine. If allowed to take effect, and this is everybody this year, what they did was they passed a bunch of abortion bans in anticipation of the Supreme Court taking away Roe versus Wade. So if allowed to take effect, it would be devastating for both Oklahomans and Texans who already, because of the 6-week ban that they passed, they go to Oklahoma for abortion. So we're looking at Kentucky, Oklahoma, Texas. Since Texas's law took effect on September 1st, which was the 6-week abortion ban, where they promoted that people like tell on each other, it gave that caveat, like you can get awarded up to $10,000 in reimbursements for legal fees if you win the case of you suing somebody attempting to get an abortion. Love that. And since that took place, Oklahoma's health centers have been seeing dozens of patients each day who have left Texas to seek abortions. Some providers reported a nearly 2,500% increase in Texas since in the last 4 months of 2021 compared to 2020. So they cannot go to Oklahoma anymore. They can't go to Louisiana. They can't go to Mississippi. They can't go out Alabama. Abortion bans have also been passed in Arizona and Idaho too. So this is just the beginning. The last 7 months in Texas are just a glimpse of what's to come in places like Idaho, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Florida, and Arizona. And they provide a very clear picture about how abortion bans are compounding existing hurdles to accessing care, right? They disproportionately affect and harm Black, Latino, and Indigenous communities, people with low incomes, and people living in rural areas, right? Because if you can't afford all the fees that go with having a speedy abortion, it's inaccessible. If you can't afford going from a farm in rural America to a city where a clinic might be, it's inaccessible because of the time limits they've put. It's difficult. And barriers have always existed, right? This isn't a Florida thing. This is a national trend. And we're looking at a world where the United States is a patchwork of different laws based on where you live. And this is the same slide again. I think, the obstacles are created by abortion bans are compounded for immigrants who are often ineligible for public health coverage and may be unable to travel for care due to immigration enforcement. And these bans are just a reminder that the days of access to legal abortion may be numbered. It's very bleak. I've done this presentation a couple of times. It's very bleak. I'm going to take a turn here really quick, and I want to talk to you about the work that Planned Parenthood does in Florida. So we're going to move back to the state, and we're going to talk about how we function as an entity, and then we're going to get into the organizing work that we can do and how you can get involved, right? So before we start talking about how to get involved in fixing these things and how to get involved in pushing against this national trend, I want to talk about how Planned Parenthood works, and particularly how it works in Florida. So in Florida, we have Planned Parenthood Southeast and North Florida, right? That's where I'm from. I'm PP Central. We have Planned Parenthood Southwest and Central Florida, which covers, Tampa, St. Pete, Orlando, Naples, Manatee County, Sarasota, all the way up to the Panhandle. And we serve over 85,000 patients, have 21 health centers combined, and we offer a wide array of services and are proud to offer abortion in the South. So a little tidbit behind the scenes. I have a script, but I get so passionate about this when I talk to you that it's just me. Anyway, so this is not like the cutest graphic, right? It's a little stool, but we like to have people think of Planned Parenthood as like a three-legged stool. We operate in three different capacities for the community. Healthcare, which is our centers where we provide services like abortion, STD tests, pregnancy testing, gynecological visits, providing birth control, IUDs, all that jazz, good stuff. And then we do advocacy, which is what I do. We host rallies, press conferences, we go to Tallahassee, we protest, we lobby. We have that arm of what we do. We have education. Education is an unknown part of what we do, but basically we have an entire staff of educators who go to different high schools and different areas in the community to teach people about safe sex. Because we're here for prevention, we're here for sexual health and sexual education. We want people to be safe and to know what they're doing, right? So a little bit more about advocacy and organizing, right? Something that needs to take place in order to change what has happened and the national trend of abortion stigma and abortion bans is we need to change the way that we think about the movement, right? It's not enough to mobilize and wave signs. We have to stand in collective, find collaborative ways to support our patients and speak to the community members about subjects that they might be uncomfortable with, right? Like, I jumped at the opportunity to come talk to you all today because talking about abortion bans and reproductive health is stuff that people don't want to do a lot of the time, right? It's uncomfortable, it's taboo, it's, in some places it may cause an argument, right? But conversations like this need to be had all the time. This is how we change the way that people perceive abortion, the way that people perceive reproductive health care, the way that people perceive Planned Parenthood, is we have to change the way that we talk about it and the way that we see what we do. So we need to find new ways to incorporate the movement into purposeful, deliberate actions and develop a new theory of change, right? And basically, according to the Center for Theory of Change, it's a comprehensive description and illustration of how and why a desired change is expected to happen in a particular context. So yeah, this helps us keep intentional in our work, and it helps us move forward and know what we're talking about. So this is extremely long. I'm going to read it. It'll be over fast, I swear. I'm looking, as the person going to read it, I'm scared. Anyway, right now, there's serious attacks on reproductive rights that come from a history of restriction on bodily autonomy via racism, classism, sexism, all upheld by a fear of talking about abortion and a deep misunderstanding of this safe and necessary procedure. Organizers at Planned Parenthood in Florida aim to build a powerful base of volunteers that is multi-generational, multicultural, multiracial, LGBT inclusive, and economically diverse. Our power is found in collective desire to create cultural change, expand Floridians' well-being. We aim to take action to build coalition, increase support for direct services, and reduce stigma around reproductive health care, with the most marginalized and misunderstood service being abortion. And that's, I find sometimes like all these presentations that I do, I'll say abortion 40 times, but like you have to, because if not, it doesn't get talked about. And I mean, who better than I, you know? So we cannot, to win back our rights and to fight further attacks, we must shift the understandings of abortion, the people who need and have access to abortion, the reason why abortion is necessary for our survival and well-being. We cannot focus on mobilization without acknowledging the real needs that patients have on the ground. We must work to support our partners who sustain direct services in our state while fighting hard to make sure our own patients' voices are heard at every level of government. We believe that these components of our work are essential for shifting to a state where abortion access is considered a given. And that's another thing, right? We're going to get into this, but like, I'll just go to the next slide. So abortion destigmatization is what needs to happen in the culture. And something you all should know is that 1 in 4, or it's actually 1 in 3, women in their lifetimes will have an abortion. This is a ridiculously common medical procedure to have. It's not this underground, unacceptable, taboo, wrong thing. It's a medical procedure built for people to decide whether or not they want to reproduce. That's it. To be able to make the decision of how you want to control your body and what you want to do with it. It's not this thing that they would like you to think is taboo that nobody supports, because that's not true. It's something like 60% of Floridians are not against abortion. So basically, 60% of people would not classify themselves in the state as against abortion. We are in the majority of people who support abortion. And it's essential to the work that we need to do to go forward. So we're going to unpack a little bit about what abortion stigma is, and then we'll go forward on how to tackle it, right? So stigma is basically defined as something that, you know, an attribute that is deeply discrediting and that moves someone from a whole and usual person to a damaged and tainted, discounted one in the eyes of society. And, you know, this stigma sticks to you as this one attribute that makes you feel, or that puts you in societal context as being, you know, unworthy or diminished in general. And it's like a negative mark. And so something to remember is that stigma does not exist without a stigmatizer. So for society to think that you are damaged, there has to be people that are promoting that message. And there are. So there is no stigma without those people that push that. And it's an interpersonal process, right? It includes labeling, stereotyping, thinking of others who are labeled as the, you know, the thing that is stigmaed as different. And in other words, discriminating against them. So it makes people feel less human or whole and worthy of respect and esteem. And there's 4 levels in the way that like stigma is upheld. So there's individual ideas on the personal level. There's community level, shared through community values. So maybe a community has a stigma or stigmatizes this one thing. There's institutional, you know, being upheld, like passing an abortion law in our state. That's an institutional stigma on a completely normal medical process. And then there's cultural, like the media we consume. So something to think about is like, when people talk about abortion in media or they depict it, it's always this like shameful, sad thing for the person who's going through it, when in reality, like that's not it. I think one of the most commonly reported feelings after people have abortions is relief. So something to think about. Yeah, we'll go forward. How do we fight abortion stigma? So this is something to think about, right? Let people you're fighting for abortion know you're fighting for abortion access. I get it. You know, sometimes I find myself in not friendly territory. Like today at FIU. The FIU, you would be surprised, is actually very, very big hotspot in Miami for anti-choice groups. They've been known to infiltrate the club that we have on campus. They've been known to demonstrate on campus. And so I was there today and I had a bunch of people like heckle me or ask me really intrusive questions based on like fake knowledge that is messaging that they share amongst themselves. Like this idea of like a 45-week abortion, which is not stipulated or real or done anywhere. Just the basics, but it's scary, but you need to let people know that you believe in abortion access and that you're fighting for it. Because the more that we keep quiet and the more that we don't talk about this, the more it'll be stigmatized and pushed to the background and taken away from people. Think about the way you talk about abortion, right? So this is big and it's tricky because a lot of the conversation around abortion for the last 30 years, ever since, I think the trend begins when Reagan ran on like his family values campaign, and that became like the conservative basis. They pushed forward with this idea that whatever didn't fit that homogenous white created vision based in their beliefs like wasn't right. And so we need to think about the way that we talk about it, and we need to own the language. So if you're encountering somebody who is baiting you into an argument, like just by enticing you or saying like really hurtful, things that might flare you up, don't try to have the conversation, just because we need to operate in spaces where we can own the language that's being said. So here's an example. Pro-life. They're not pro-life, they're anti-choice. You're anti-choice. That's what you are. You are against the choice. You're against people being able to choose, is what you are. They have labeled themselves pro-life. They are actually anti-choice. And then another term that they love to use is late-term abortions, which one, isn't accurately scientific, and two, in most ways that they talk about it, isn't real. So the person telling me 45-week abortions were bad today, right? Roe v. Wade stipulates up to 23 weeks of viability. And so there's this like myth that goes around in the anti-choice community that we promote late-term abortions. There is no late term. That late term literally means after the baby is born. That's what scientifically that literally means. So instead of saying that, it's abortion later in pregnancy is kind of the term that we use, but that doesn't even really have a specific gauge. People tend to think of later in pregnancy after 15 weeks. But even then, like, it's just a phrase to own and take back power from this narrative that they've created, and also insist to people that like it's stipulated up to 23 weeks. And even then, it's 23 weeks is not legal in a lot of different areas of our country. So something to think about, the way you talk about abortion. And, if you ever want to attend a training with me, I host a lot of online Zoom events like this, and we have entire trainings on how to talk about abortion stigma, how to get rid of it. We're going to have an entire event talking about why the courts are so important in reproductive rights. So you can get involved with me. Okay, well, I talked about all of this, didn't I? Okay, I talked literally about that. Wow, cool. I did this all from memory. Thank you. I'm impressed. So we're going to get to the final part of our presentation, which is going to be about abortion funds, right? Something that people don't know is there are organizations that are built to help people access money to obtain abortions. So here's the deal. One of the best ways that you can help directly people who are trying to seek abortions is by donating to abortion funds, right? So I'm going to send some fundraising links here. FAN, the Florida Access Network, is a completely separate entity. We are not affiliated with them. They are an abortion fund. And what they do is they take applications from people throughout the state to help them get travel costs, childcare costs, food costs, maybe to help cover the cost of the abortion, but to help them make obtaining an abortion accessible. So here's two. There's Florida Access Network, and then there's WEN, which is more like South Florida. I'm going to put Women's Emergency Network. Okay. I'm going to put links for you all here in the chat. And something to keep in mind is that even if you donate $1 a month, this is better than like one big lump sum, because what it does is it helps them factor into their budget how much money they can give to people a month. So if you'd rather be like, hey, I'm going to give you $5 a month, that's better than like one lump sum of $500. Marie, maybe I can get in contact with them about that. They have, okay, so on the website I sent you, Marie, they have a PO box. So I'm pretty sure that you could send it there. At least WEN does. Yeah, you can write a check. And so does FAN. FAN has a PO box too in Orlando. So both of these websites have physical addresses that you could send this to. And yeah, like I said, the country is going to end up looking like a patchwork of different laws depending on different places, like that allow abortion up to the Roe versus Wade stipulated time before, you know, the Supreme Court strikes it down. So what patients really need is money to get places. That's what they need. And they need direction, and they need help on how to get there. So yeah, this is the end of my presentation. And I know that we have some time for questions or just discussion. So I'll give it, I don't know, Glima, if you want to like lead that, but I'm open for questions on anything y'all have.
I know Carol Klopfer I popped in her questions at the beginning. Do you want me to read it out? She wanted to know, could you discuss the abortion pill and safe self-managed abortion?
Okay, so something we like to do is be completely honest in the fact I'm not a health provider, right? I'm not completely familiar with exactly how the medication works, and I wish I was. We had a whole talk about it this morning, but basically, there's a few things going on when it comes to, I can offer you some information about a conversation on the abortion pill. So the abortion pill is safe. I know it's 2 doses. The first is the medication to help cause, I think it's like a simulated miscarriage, and then the second helps with pain. And it's completely safe. There's a larger discussion happening on self-managed abortion that we as a provider have decided we don't want to speak on, because there are organizations that advocate for that, right? And there are organizations that don't. I think it's better left up to organizations like, I don't know, the I'm thinking, I know the acronym SJCW. There's organizations that teach doulas, or like, you know, another version of a midwife to help people self-manage abortions outside of clinical settings. But we're not experts on that issue, and we don't want to speak to that. And that's something that's coming up a lot, is because the country is going to become a patchwork of different abortion laws. There's this discussion on like sending medication to different places and stuff like that. Planned Parenthood cannot engage in any activity that is illegal, because we will be shut down and therefore not able to provide service to patients that need us. So we don't want to speak to any of that, but that is a larger discussion. And political, how to resolve the issue. Oh, if you want to read that, Glima, go.
Yeah, Carol Klopfer wants to know, how do we resolve the issue of anti-abortion forces sucking away our energy, time, and resources to protect reproductive rights?
So this is hard, right? A lot of the reason why we came up with this idea of helping change abortion stigma and coming up with our own language in these conversations is because they have owned so much of the conversation for so long. They for the last, I feel like for the last 30 years, like they've owned the way that we talk about abortion, the way that bills are named. Like, I think the way that we end up on the offense instead of the defense. Right now, it's a lot of defensive work in Florida, right? And that's because they've caught us after an abortion ban, after a 24-hour delay. And I think the way that we end up on the offense is by owning the words that we speak. So I don't know, this is a whole other training, but basically some little tidbits for y'all is, one, keep the conversation centered on choice. People are going to try to bait you into arguments about religious beliefs. Like, something I got is like, do you think this is a life? But do you think it has feelings? But do you think whatever? And doctors have stipulated that abortion is a completely safe process for the entities involved, right? There is no clinical, medicinal objection to abortion as it comes to physicians. So that's the basis that we're walking in, is that this is a safe medical procedure had by so many people, and that we want to center the conversations we're going to have in choice. So insist on it. Talk to people about the fact that, you know, people's right to choose what they want to do with their lives is the most important. And that's a little bit about how to be on the offense when it comes to people trying to suck away resources. But I think the faster we, or the more effectively we change the stigma and the conversation about it, the easier that things like abortion bans and other policies will go away, you know? So something to think about.
So I wanted to say that, let's see, I went to college in the era before Roe versus Wade, and I went through hell to get an abortion when I was 20 because I knew that wasn't the kind of life that I wanted to have. And I did finally decide to have my first child when I was about 40, but it didn't happen until I was 45. But it was like a wonderful blessing and you know, a terrific thing in my life. But I was able to decide what kind of life I wanted to live. And I can't believe that this genie is going to put back in the bottle. I mean, I can't believe as women we're allowing this to happen. And after Trump was elected, you had everyone pouring into DC with these pussy hats and, you know, having this huge rally with uniting women on, you know, what was about to happen to our rights, our politics, our lives. And where is all that energy today? I don't understand it. I think one thing is that women don't talk about their abortions enough. It's still something that's kind of secret and some shameful thing. And if people were more upfront with this, that it was an ordinary medical decision that you made and it's safe, and you know, the greatest feeling afterwards is relief, if that's what you want, then, you know, they're talking about, you know, not being forced to wear a mask. Well, here you're forced to bear a child. I mean, it's ridiculous, but we have to somehow harness this energy for women to protest. I think we're just taking this all lying down, and I don't understand why we are allowing all this to happen and to have our rights taken away, especially people in my generation who remember what things were like before we had Roe versus Wade. So, I mean, my feeling is that today we have technology. So hopefully there won't be back alley abortions where, you know, women are jeopardized by having things inserted into their vaginas that people don't know what they're doing. And, you know, whatever it takes to get the medical abortions to people, even if it involves, you know, circumventing some laws, there has to be some established underground system to make sure women who need these pills get them. And, you know, I don't know how we work together. I support many, many different organizations for women's reproductive rights. And there's so many out there that all want help. And also like the Guttmacher Institute is doing research. And, you know, there's just so many. And like, it's one of my things, one of my priorities for philanthropy. But I think talking about abortion, making it a normal medical procedure and trying to figure out how to harness the new technology and get it to people in some way will be the key maybe to trying to turn things around. Thank you.
I think, you know, we don't make it emotional enough. It doesn't work when you give people facts. I just find that it doesn't. And we miss the point in politics and everything is because we don't have a simple message and we don't make it emotional. To make a woman go through a 9-month pregnancy that she doesn't want is cruel. A man doesn't have to go through that. It's absolutely outrageous, in my mind, to bring an unwanted child into the world and to make a woman go through that. You're denigrating her with no choice. You're treating her like an animal. They're treating us like objects and not people. We have to make it about the women and how this affects them and how absolutely outrageous and cruel it is. And we have to do that and turn it around rather than oh, it's a fetus, you know, it's got a heartbeat, it's got this bullshit. If they want to go that route, let's talk about pigs and cows and when they have a heartbeat and when they have a brain. You know,
I agree with you, Sue. And I think it's funny because I've always been of the train of thought that this is not about, I think it's bullshit, excuse my French, that it's about the fetus and this and that, because you've got a bunch of Republican lawmakers paying for abortions left and right for their mistresses. That is bullshit. The truth is, this is the patriarchy wanting to keep women out of the workforce. Men right now are like losing the testosterone. Look at the Tucker Carlson bullshit going on right now. Now that women have advanced to where we have advanced, that now women have more college degrees than men do, are getting more position of powers in companies than ever before, men are feeling the heat. And this only happened because women were able to control their reproduction. Once a woman can control how many children she has and when she has them, she will be able to compete with men in an even playing field. And that's not what they want. Don't ever believe that this is about the baby or about what women go through. This is about keeping women barefoot and pregnant so that men can continue having the advantage in the workforce and everywhere else. Because if it were about the babies, then, and if it was about abortion and killing babies and whatever the hell, not even a freaking baby, it's a fetus. Why did they fight so hard for them not to approve the birth control pill? These men fought against the birth control pill, which would be the number one way to prevent abortions, is to keep women from not getting pregnant. If you don't want a woman to have an abortion, then give her birth control. But that's not what they want. They want you pregnant and they want you home raising kids. Period. This is, to me, the number one thing that not a lot of people talk about is that this is the patriarchy. This is the patriarchy wanting to keep their power. Women are becoming too powerful. We now have a female vice president, and this is just enough is enough. That's my opinion.
Well, I wonder about these anti-abortion people, anti-contraception people. So many of them are women. I think it's must be 50% and maybe more. I mean, there must be some other motivation besides male dominance and so forth. And when,
I think it's religious, Duncan.
That's religious.
Yeah.
That would be the religious
yeah, okay,
branch
so
of
we,
it.
so we could agree there are different components of it, and there's a male thing, and that's some sort of primordial testosterone thing, if you will. And then there's a religion thing, and then there's maybe some people think they're morally better than the others, or they have some racism maybe too. They associated a lot of propagation of the species, unnecessary propagation with Black people, and so they want to say if it's a white person, you shouldn't be that way, and so we're white people, and we don't need to have this. And I guess there are a lot of different things that are pushing at it. But I guess if one just said if any one of these things is the only thing, you kind of lose your argument. Then you need a broader argument.
Right. Yeah,
Against
I'm not saying it's the only thing. I'm just saying it's the one thing that nobody ever brings up. And it really angers me. I know it's not the only thing. Obviously, you have religion, you have, I mean, women are their own worst enemy in a lot of times. Like I forget who said the quote, a misogynist is a man who hates women more than women hate women. I completely understand that it's not the only thing, but I just find it really funny that it's the one thing that nobody ever talks about.
But I think maybe they have some of these religious people. I mean, they're for moral standards, and moral standards have sort of decayed in the country because, I mean, you have all this outrageous behavior now, you know, like Kardashian or reality TV type stuff. That's our own culture nowadays too. And the dear hearts and gentle people who lived in our hometown, they're insulted by that. They think they have their traditional values, not the big city values, the profligate values. And so these people say, well, okay, you got yourself pregnant. Okay, now this is your punishment. But they really don't say that's your punishment, but that's what they have in their heart of heart. They think that that would be a punishment and a way to really stick it to these girls that aren't behaving like they should have been. I mean, that might be part of the thing too. You can't win these people over by being stridently feminist in your approach to it, or cosmopolitan or urban or city dwelling or well-educated. That type of argument doesn't ring true with these people. It has to be something more fundamental, like your daughter or your cousin, or you have someone that's suffered from these circumstances, not necessarily all her fault, but she should have a recourse, a way out, and is that really at no one's expense, and argue it that way.
I was gonna say a lot of the reason why. So there's a few things I want to emphasize that have been mentioned because they're very important. One, Phyllis was talking about story shelling. Sorry, just had a brain fart. Phyllis and Sue were talking about sharing stories, storytelling, basically. This idea of humanizing abortion, of making it emotional, of making it real, is storytelling. And that's what Phyllis did. Like that was a really good example. Like, here's my story, here's why I believe, and I am you. That is the first, which I'm surprised I don't have in this presentation, but it's like the first step of what we do. We have an entire speakers bureau built on collecting stories and storytellers to talk about abortions that they've had, and just talk about why it's okay. Because it's the hardest part, right? It's all about humanizing. The second point I wanted to address was that, we're talking about, is it religion? Is it patriarchy? Is it this? Is it? So I feel like in order to, it's like you all are saying, it's a little bit of everything, right? In order to keep power, different entities have taken on or taken in these very almost fanatical views of religion or groups and taken them in in order to build this like conservative coalition, right? Which is essentially what happened in the 80s. And, you know, that's what's kept them in power. And those passing laws. So a little bit about the 15-week law ban, the 15-week abortion ban. They originally proposed one like Texas, right? Which would be a 6-week ban, empowering people to tell on you because they'll win money from the state if they win a lawsuit, right? So they initially promoted that, but then they said, no, we're going to go easy and do a 15-week ban. So it's a little bit of a push and tug and pull between these groups that they need to satisfy, these religious groups that lawmakers need to satisfy, and staying in power. That's what that was. And even today, like the person who I was encountering at FIU's campus said it wasn't a 6-week ban though. And this person was stridently anti-abortion. So like, why would somebody stridently anti-abortion like want to make that caveat? You know what I mean? It's a weird dichotomy of like people trying to stay in power and appease these groups, and then these groups propagating this message, and it's circular and it goes back and forth. And so something to think about, even though people who support abortion are in the majority. The problem is, it's like what was mentioned, like they're not as fervent or haven't been as fervent in the last 3 decades, which is why we're here. It's not from nowhere. And it's like you all are saying, there's a couple of ways to center the conversation in a more approachable way to people, which is you start by empathizing or trying to create empathy by sharing your story if you have one, or you take it to a place of choice, right? So I mentioned like trying to keep the conversation centered in choice for this reason, because it's like Duncan said, like there are some ways to approach the conversation that people might find off-putting. But if you continue forward with this idea that you tell others medical choices should be your own, you should not have to get the input and stipulation from different lawmakers, your body, your choice, and you deserve to be able to decide what to do with your body. That has been the most universally effective message. There's this big conversation on persuasion. And I always think of persuasion in campaign terms, like you persuade people to vote this way or that way, you know what I mean? But we are not, I think, in this realm yet of like deep persuasion work, because we have the majority. It's just about empowering them and changing the way that we talk about the issue and approaching it from this area of choice for people to take the issue and make it common, not stigmatized. So like, that's a little bit more context about why we talked about it, but all great points. Thank you guys for this conversation. It's really great. I'll stop talking now.
Yeah, I had a question. I put it in the box, the chat box, about Plan B. And I'm not completely informed about this. I know it exists, and I know it can be taken the morning after.
Yes.
And I know that it's an over-the-counter, it's an OTC according to the FDA.
Yeah.
Which means, but I don't know whether it's on the shelves, where you walk in along with the aspirins and the pain relievers and so forth, or whether it's behind the pharmacist's counter.
It's in the aisle. Usually it's behind a glass. Usually they keep it secured, and you have to ask for assistance, which I know. But usually their motivations are that it's so expensive that people just take it if you don't do that. It's very expensive. It's like $50 a pill. I think at Planned Parenthood it's a little bit more affordable, depending on where you are, depending if you receive state funding. But it is very expensive. It's about $50.
How widespread is the knowledge of that? Like the waitress in the donut shop, or the clerk at the 7-Eleven. I mean, would she know about that?
Yeah, you could it's pretty commonly, I think most women or most people who reproduce know, like, that Plan B is for the morning after. And so basically Plan B is not like an abortion pill, but it's a prevention pill for the morning after, or like within 72 hours of unprotected sex.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's
it
3
prevents
days.
the egg from implanting.
Yeah.
Yeah. What Elena said. Thank you, Elena.
Thank you.
I think Phyllis wanted to say something. Go ahead, Phyllis.
I worked with Wen Center for a while, so surprisingly, a medical abortion is more than for a surgical abortion, which I was shocked to hear. The surgical is about 500, and the medical is about 600, which is amazing. But in an ideal world, every woman would have the abortion pills in her medicine chest for when she needs them, and that would like cut to the chase and get rid of this whole thing. So it's ironic that these Latin American conservative Catholic countries are now liberating their abortion laws, and they're allowing women to have abortions. I think a country like Poland, which is a conservative Christian country, is allowing abortions. And here we are, the United States of America, freedom rings, is tightening the strings on abortion. So it's really politics. And I agree with the patriarchy. Elena is 100% right. And what the right wing has done is harness the evangelicals and the Christian movement, and it's very corrupt now. But the main goal was they're throwing out abortion as a bone to attract them. But it's really about power, and it's about money, and they seem to be winning, and our country is losing. And it's just, abortion is just one part of this whole scenario, and we just have to somehow try to get back our country. And one thing that I'm doing that you might be interested in, and I was like poo-pooing this, I work for a lot of voting things. I would make phone calls and get all the answering machines, and I felt like I was totally wasting my time. But there's a group called the Dade County Senior Democratic Caucus. And what they do is once a month, they get together and they have this very expensive texting software that Charlie Crist has given them. And, basically they're supporting Crist to try to get rid of DeSantis. And I thought they're crazy. They said they were going to, carpet the whole state with these texts, but they really do. I made like 750 texts in 5 minutes. And so they meet once a month at 4:30, and I don't have a link, I'm sorry, but try Googling the Dade County Senior Democratic Caucus. And you can, it's just a little bit of time, but it's so effective. And, that's what we have to do. We have to try to turn the tide and get rid of DeSantis with, however we can do it. And every state has to try to do this. And until we take back our government, I think we're not going to see these changes that we need. It's all part and parcel of political movement.
Absolutely.
I did want to say something. Jessica, you had pointed out, like what we're talking about, what Duncan was talking about, and Sue, and you, Jessica, about how we present the message to convince people who aren't on our side. But as you also mentioned, if we are the majority, you want to rile up the majority to speak up. However, there's also the level of not reaching out across the aisles, but rather consolidating people who are in agreement. And you mentioned about organizing. And so that question that I popped into the chat was really about that how are we reaching out to make coalitions with people that are fighting for healthcare, people that are fighting for, access to AIDS medicine. They have so much experience. And what Elena said, was a labor activist. And what you said about, the US being a patchwork of different states and different laws, that's exactly what labor is like. It's pathetic. I mean, you can't have, there's no maternity leave to speak of, 3 weeks. Give me a break. So, I mean, there's just so much, not across the aisle reaching out, but so much consolidation to be done on the level of people who are already in agreement. I think we're just trying too hard to convince people that are already sucked in by that religious minority. And I think we really need to do a lot more work. Maybe the state senior Democratic caucus is doing that, but you know, the feminist movement talked about what Elena was saying. You know, patriarchy and labor has a lot, they have so much in common, in the sense that, you know, keep women doing the free labor of society, washing dishes, taking care of babies and not getting paid for it. They just want to put us back there.
And not competing with men.
Yeah, not competing with men. So this is all at the strategic level. And I think we're just wasting our breath by, like, Biden's trying to reach across the aisles. He's not getting anywhere. There's no fucking Build Back Better program. Like, let's stop it already and go ahead and consolidate our base like the right wing has done. That's my piece.
Can I jump in for just a second here? I don't know if it's indicative of everything else, the dearth of the male presence here in this group, but I think it's important to reach out to males. And this is not a female issue. This is a human issue. And I think I'm just surprised at how few men are expressing themselves in this regard. So I said in jest, because, but I guess you've seen some memes to this extent, but a woman, you know, it takes 9 months to get pregnant. In that time, a man can impregnate thousands of women. So I think vasectomies, I'm pro-vasectomies for men. And nobody laughed at that one, so okay. And the pro-life is pro-life until the baby is born. And I guess we all know. Jessica, thank you for a wonderful presentation. I asked, though, in chat, your take on NARAL, N-A-R-A-L.
I was going to ask you about that. I don't know. I don't have a take on NARAL as like a panelist. I don't think they do. What do? They do work.
It's a pro-choice organization. So,
yeah, and they do work pushing candidates forward, right? No. The right to access, the fight for reproductive freedom. It's another 501. I don't know. They're another 501. NARAL does work too, but they're not a healthcare provider. Planned Parenthood has this really weird role in the community where we advocate. At least this affiliate, we're split up into affiliates throughout the country, right? So I'm Southeast and North Florida. There's, you know, Central Oklahoma. There's West Kentucky. There's like, we're split up into little affiliates throughout the state. Yeah, NARAL does policy. Okay, cool. But Planned Parenthood has this really weird role where we organize and we do patient care, because that's what we were founded on, was patient care, and organizing came second. So I don't know. I think NARAL does good work. They do, and it's policy oriented. They don't organize as much, but they do a lot of legal work, which needs to be done, like legislative work, I mean. But there's a lot of organizations fighting this fight, right? Like, and it's, you know what, it's like, so Glima, when you were talking about intersectionality and like working in coalition with other groups, it's tough. It's really tough because there's so many issues to tackle. Like, you know, I was working with a sex worker to talk about, you know, sex work and decriminalizing sex work. And, you know, they were talking about getting Narcan, the medication, to like help prevent overdoses into the hands of as many people, sex workers, as possible, right? Then it's like you mentioned, there's organizations like Pride Lines, there's organizations like I can't remember this other one, but they're trying to give out the anti-HIV pill for free, like the prevention pill, to communities that are affected by HIV. Like this issue, and you know what, I liked what Ray said, because Planned Parenthood is trying to move this direction. So like, notice how not once during my presentation did I say for women's rights, for women's pregnancies, we are moving towards and not to discount the plight of women as a woman, as an identifying woman, never to discount that, ever. We are moving towards a gender neutral, open space because, you know, bodily autonomy, it's like you said, like bodily autonomy is this is a human issue. This is a human right. And it should be anyway, to be able to decide. But it's difficult, right? Working in coalition is difficult because there's so many issues that need to be heard and that are dire. I think we try. I do a lot of work in coalition. So I'm going to plug my own events for you guys. Next week, we are having a sex trivia and sex positive karaoke event at a bar in Wynwood. And we're doing that with this group called Power U, which helps advocate for the youth. And they have a reproductive justice person. So basically like somebody who advocates for the reproductive justice of youth, them being educated, them having access to things like condoms, education, etc. And the Miami Worker Center, which represents, you know, low income or just generally like workers in Miami. And they do really good work too. So we partner with organizations, and they you know, they support our mission too, because it's like you all have said, reproduction and the creation of life, of you know, of being pregnant, of not being pregnant, decides so many factors in your life. Like it's very determinative, and people should be able to make those decisions on whether or not they choose to go forward with a pregnancy or not, to create or not. So I think other organizations hop onto us, and then we hop onto them. And I do a lot of coalition work. Even like today, I'm here with y'all. So I don't know. Yeah.
I'm going to jump in and say we're over time, unless you have an absolutely pressing question for Jessica. I think she's had a very long day making, spreading the word and coalescing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
That was
you very
so
much.
Thank you.
Jessica, for all your work. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. Keep sharing your stories. Keep being as badass as you are. You guys are a great group. I would love to